And welcome back to Boom and Bust. My guest today is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. She is founder of Let's Talk Supply Chain. Sarah, obviously you've interviewed a lot of businesses. You interact with them in your professional life. What are you seeking to encourage with Canadian businesses when it comes to supply chain?
I think one of the biggest things as Canadians, we're a little bit hesitant when it comes to messaging and getting our brand out there. And I would encourage any companies that are in supply chain right now that the community wants to hear from you. They want to know who's out there and who can help them with their supply chain challenges. So that's probably the number one thing, because I think as Canadians, we can be a little bit conservative when it comes to marketing. And I really think that people need to know who is out there and how they can help them.
Yeah, and I think you also raise a good point that this hasn't been until very recently a real topic of conversation. If you're in the logistics business, which obviously your family has been, then it has been a normal thing to talk about. But until very recently, it wasn't sort of above ground in terms of understanding and knowledge and having that conversation. That seems to be changing now, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And people are really getting a better understanding as to what supply chain is. And so the supply chain isn't just the movement of product. The beginning part of supply chain really takes in sourcing. So,
Mhm.
sourcing of material. So, if you take a cell phone, for example, there's different components within the cell phone that people need to source the material for. And then they need to buy the material. Then they need to put that material together into an iPhone, and then they need to move that product to a warehouse. And then it gets delivered to the end consumer.
Right.
And I think that's the really exciting part, is that when I talk about what supply chain actually is and the different components from start to finish, people now have a much better understanding when they look around their homes and understand that each thing that they have in their home has come from a supply chain from start to finish. And there are a lot of people involved in all of that process.
Yeah. Do you think as well our experiences during COVID, where you had these, in some cases, massive supply chain disruptions? I'm thinking, well, it started with toilet paper for some strange reason, and then it went to vaccines and PPE, and
Yeah.
then all these other things. The first bumps in the Red Sea started around that time too. Has that been instructive to get people's attention onto supply chain?
I think that's part of it. I think also we've heard politicians. We've heard mainstream media. My t-shirt says hashtag supply chain issues. I feel like we've heard it in TV shows and movies. We've heard people use it as an excuse for not having product available. And so I feel like the word supply chain has been used over and over and over again in a variety of different ways. And I feel like if you hear something over and over and over again, you're going to learn a little bit more about it every single time. So I think it's that, but then I think it's also the mainstream media talking about not just supply chain either. They've also been using the word procurement a lot.
Right.
And procurement means the buying of product. And so I've been hearing procurement a lot in respect to supply chains as well.
Yes. How many times in our daily lives have we heard that something doesn't exist because of supply chain issues? You're bang on about that. Let's talk about female involvement, because that's something you concentrate on in the supply
Yeah.
chain world. What have you seen that impresses you about female involvement in this area?
Well, traditionally, supply chain's been a very male-dominated industry, and today it still is. But we have some phenomenal female talent in supply chain, and I think it's really just empowering them to have their voice, right? Be able to tell their story, share their journey of, what did they do out of school? What has their career looked like? Where has it taken them as far as travel? Because there is so much amazing opportunity in supply chain, so many different things that you could do. And I don't think a lot of people realize it. And so I think it's important that we empower those voices and talk about those journeys.
And do you think that there's a lot of probably good stories out there about females who have been in logistics for years and years, just like yourself, but who are now getting their story out.
Yeah, yeah. And I usually wear a t-shirt as well that says diversity matters in supply chain.
Got it.
Because I really feel it's not just about gender either. Diversity it really does matter in supply chain, and representation matters.
Right.
And I have a nonprofit called the Blended Pledge where we
let's
help
talk about
put,
that. We're going to take a brief
Yeah.
break because I don't want to
Okay.
miss that thought. We'll be back after
Sure.
these messages.